Rohit Gahlot, thanks for joining me on Geared for Growth.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, I've been looking forward to this interview for a while because you've got quite an interesting story, and I suppose we may as well dive right into it. And from the beginning, I know obviously your life predated coming to Australia, but of course that was a huge move in you moving from India to Australia in 2017. Now, we often hear lots of stories about people moving to the country with $5 in their pocket, or maybe they had a trust fund. I'm interested in what you actually landed in the country with, because of a country of immigrants, essentially. Like the Australia wouldn't be what it is without migration. It's not a story that I relate to personally. I'm always interested to go, well, what would it be like just going to a completely new country without necessarily having a big stack of cash in your pocket?
Yeah, but I certainly had more than $5. I'm glad. Uh,
Good.
yes. So I basically came in July 2017. I actually boarded the flight exactly in the same day when it was my son's second birthday. In the morning, we had cake cutting, and in the afternoon, I was boarding the flight.
Wow.
So yeah, it has been. I've been in the country now for almost 7.5 years or more. So I came with I had $7,000 cash with me when I came. So I was working back in India in IT. Again, I was working with Macquarie Bank there. So
Right.
Macquarie Bank has got a branch in Gurgaon in India, and near the capital city though. And I was working there, and I worked there for more than 4 years. And I think in my office there were many people who were seeking transfers, but I never asked for a transfer, and I just resigned and moved on
Mhm.
because I was confident that I should be able to find something here with my skills.
Yep.
So I was into IT, had almost 10 years of IT experience. I came alone. I thought like once I get a job, then I'll get my family in.
I mean, that's another thing just to unpack. It's not something that I can relate to, having such a young child and then going off on this adventure with a mission to basically bring them across to you. I mean, that must have been a very emotional day, especially on a birthday.
Oh yeah, it was emotional, but I wanted to intentionally make it that day so that it basically becomes a memory, and I'm glad that I did that because now whenever I'm celebrating my anniversary in the country, I'm also celebrating his birthday. So yeah, it just coincides well.
That's wonderful. So, not $5 in your pocket. Obviously, you had an established IT career, but even still, $7,000 to go to a completely new country isn't a huge amount. I know you had some support in setting yourself up. What did that look like? What actually happens when you fly to a new country and you're trying to set yourself up?
Yeah, I basically came so I had got a cousin here. So when I like 2 weeks before I was flying, I didn't know whether I was coming to Melbourne or Sydney. So I basically booked a flight to Melbourne via Sydney so that I can basically go anywhere wherever I want. So I
Mhm.
was initially planning to go to Melbourne, but then just I think a week ago, before my travel, I decided I'll be coming to Sydney because one of my cousin who was living here, he offered me his place to live in until I find a job for a couple of weeks. And then, yeah, and then I just missed my flight from Sydney to Melbourne. I came out of Sydney and then I started looking for jobs. Yeah.
Isn't that quite amazing? Like, obviously, you're very established in Sydney now, but it was sort of like, Sydney, Melbourne, it could be anything.
Could be anything. Both places meant the same at the time. Yeah. Well, I was initially trying to get jobs from there, but I couldn't. So I didn't know where I would be landing. But yeah, I'm glad that I came to Sydney, stayed there, started giving interviews. And then, yeah, I think it was 5 weeks later when I got my family in. But by that time also, I haven't got a job. So
Yeah, right.
like I've been applying for jobs, and there were a few rejections. And then after 3 or 4 weeks, I just started feeling homesick a lot.
Mhm.
So I was not doing a lot of expenses because I was living at his place and had some money with myself. But yeah, and then I think after 4 weeks, I just got a random phone call. Not random, but I wasn't expecting them to ring me. So somebody rang me that they are offering me a job, and it was just a phone call where they were willing to offer me a job, but they haven't disclosed anything. No
Right.
pay package disclosed, no email confirmation. But then I took that as an opportunity. I made an excuse to my cousin that I have got the job and I want to bring my family in. I just took that as an excuse to bring them. And yeah, then I booked their flight. in 2 days time. So I got this call, I think I got this call on Thursday, and next Thursday they came here. So yeah, I started looking for apartments, looking for furniture. I organized everything. During this time, I realized that my $7,000 is not enough.
Mm.
And then that's when my cousin, I asked for him because I didn't have a bank account so I opened a bank account, but it had $0 because
Mhm.
I came with $7,000 cash. So I asked him to transfer me $1,000 so that I can give him cash. He was well established there, so he ended up transferring another 10, so which was $10,000. He said,
Yep.
"Man, take it, use it," and then and I just, that was a big support, I would say. And
Mm.
then I got furnitures. I got my apartment on the night. Like I got the apartment keys at 3 p.m. that next Wednesday, and on Thursday morning my family landed. So in the evening I was basically fixing the bed up, making it comfortable for them so that they can come and rest. And then yeah, that's how we
Well,
started. Still don't have a job. Haven't heard back in the last 1 week from the people who rang me that they are willing to offer me a job. But yeah, it was an exciting times. Now when I look back, like I really feel a bit emotional. But yeah, that was a good time.
yeah, and I mean a crazy story really for someone
Yeah,
that's never had that sort of experience. So
yeah.
obviously you got a job soon enough to the point where really within sort of 2 years you bought your first property. What was the goal behind that property purchase? Was that a sort of a stepping stone to get into investment, or what did property kind of mean to you at that point in time?
Oh, that see, I think coming from an Indian background where everyone has got usually their home to live in, so I think
Yep.
that was just the mindset that I need some place of mine to be living in, though with a mortgage. So yeah, after I was working for a year, I decided that I need to be buying something, but I never had the deposit. So I was initially thinking about an apartment that I was living in, that I'll buy that. That was my biggest dream, I would say. But then. I think things moved a bit differently because at the time I was able to extract some funds similar to super we have got in India. There is a provident fund, so I was able to take some money back, which was probably equivalent to around 35 grand. So I got
Yep.
that money here, and then I was saving good money because I got into the contractual role, was making good at the time. So I saved quite, like, I think I was we were just living on maybe 3.5, 4 grand a month because it was only me earning. My wife was not, she was a housewife. Then I got two young kids, so she was looking after them. So,
Yep.
but yeah, we were not spending much money. I think we were just saving probably 60, 70% of our salaries, my
Yeah.
salary. So I think that has given me a good boost. And then, uh, yeah, in 2019, oh, lucky enough, like that was the time when the market has actually tanked. So I think the property that I bought in 2019, if I had funds in 2017, I couldn't have bought at that point in time because it was out of my budget. But then the market, I think I I accidentally picked up the bottom in Sydney. I've just been lucky at that time buying my
Yep.
first property. It was just the right time, right place, and I got into it.
It's interesting because obviously you're a highly credentialed property investor today, but to go back to that point and go, yeah, there's a bit of luck, but you've got to be in it to win it, I suppose.
Yeah, it was actually just pure luck, I think. And I was looking at a different suburb every day, and I was not even wanting to buy in the suburb where I ended up buying. I
Right.
just got disappointed by an agent, and I thought I won't be buying in this suburb. And then on Sunday, I went to a different suburb, ended up looking at our first property there, and then we ended up buying that. So it was just like things fell into place, I would say.
Yep. Now, obviously, you did have that luck in buying the bottom in that particular
Yeah.
suburb, and you started I suppose, your purely investment journey. What did that look like, and what was kind of the mindset behind you going, okay, I've got the principal place of residence, but I've got equity here, or I've got an opportunity to get into investing. What did that look like, and what was the
Yeah.
mindset?
See, in 2019, like May, June, when we bought this property, we just moved in. Never thought about investing at all. But I think it all started towards the starting of 2020, like when COVID hit. I stopped going to the office. So I
Yep.
started utilizing, and at the same point in time, I was promoted into a senior role, a mid management role in my corporate, which was a killing job. Like I was just like I used to be from a technical background, but now I was just like facing uh, a very different environment in the corporate. So that actually motivated me to start going for morning walks. I started looking to listening different tapes, and I was listening to motivation initially, but then during the day when I used to get time, I started reading propertychat.com.au,
Yep.
and then various other podcasts on YouTube, and that got me interested. I went to library nearby, got some books, started reading them. That just got me interested, and I think it all started around February, March 2020, and then I think by July, August, I got to a time like I was. There were so many days when I'm just sitting at home until midnight, just watching YouTube back to back, listening to so many podcasts, and it just became. I think I was just getting so much interested in understanding and learning about it. And then I think June, July, August, I started researching in Brisbane somehow.
Yep.
I started researching in Brisbane. I was looking at various suburbs. So I was again going through Property Chat and various other forums. I got to know that there were people who were buying properties with potential to build a granny flat at the back. So I was exactly wanting to do something similar. I started looking in Brisbane City Council. I went to Boondal and other neighboring suburbs. Then I got to know that you really cannot let the even if you build a granny, you cannot let it to someone outside of the main household. So it has to be part of the same family. Then that got me moving outside of Brisbane City Council.
Yep.
So I got to Moreton Bay then. Like I and then and I don't know anywhere again. Second time again, I think I knew a little bit, but I knew nothing about data at the time. So I just started going along the train line. The first suburb that comes after Brisbane City Council was Strathpine, and then I started looking for properties around that area.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was spoken to a mortgage broker at the time, and he was mentioning you couldn't get a mortgage because you've taken a huge mortgage to get your principal place of residence, single earning, four people, you really can't get anything. But
Yep.
then I was just going through Facebook once, and I saw an advertisement of a mortgage broker from Eastern Suburbs, and she then ended up ringing me and mentioned that based on my circumstances, I could get a mortgage from Resimac, which was a
Yep.
non-banking lender. So, and that way, and that day I was talking to the agent. I didn't know that there is a concept called subject to finance. So when I was talking to the agent, I said, "Man, I don't know if I'll get the mortgage." That agent told me that if you don't get a mortgage, you get your 100% money back, which was a surprise for me because back in the days I knew that in Sydney you used to lose some deposit.
Yep.
So and then I ended up putting an offer with $5,000 deposit with 90% hope that I won't make it,
Right.
because I always used to think that if a mortgage broker said you can't get a loan, it means you can't get a loan. But now I keep telling to everyone that if a mortgage broker says you can't get a loan, it means he can't get you a loan. Find a new
Yeah.
one. So yeah, that day, and that day, I think that was a good move. I ended up signing that contract, and lucky enough, I was able to get the mortgage.
Mm.
So yeah, I bought that property in Strathpine in January 2021.
Yep. Okay.
My
And
first purchase.
And for context, and we might sort of zero back, but let's talk about your portfolio such as it is today, as much as you're happy to share in terms of the number of properties and the equity, the debt position. What can you share with us there?
Okay, yeah, I can let you know transparently. So, I settled on my last property on 8th of December, 3 months ago, which
Yep.
was my property number 11th. And with this property, so that is the only property that I bought as a land. Otherwise, all have been existing dwellings. So this property number 11, I'm trying to be a bit more creative because I love Melbourne. I want to be in Melbourne, but I can't be heavily negatively geared. So I am trying to build a dual lock there.
Yep.
So this 11th property that I'm buying, the land I bought without the build. So the build is costing me almost 450 grand. But even ignoring that, because I'm yet to take that mortgage because the build is yet to start. With the current position with the land, I think I'm sitting around 10.5 to 10.7, somewhere around that in terms of the total portfolio value.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
In terms of the debt position, I think I'm sitting somewhere around 6.2.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's not aggressive. It's a fairly kind of reasonable sort of debt to income, debt to asset value ratio.
Yeah, I think I may have 4.5 level of equity there.
Yep. So it begs the question. we were just talking, and I purposely skipped ahead just to get
Okay.
sort of the contrast of the situation. You were at the point where you were facing some headwinds getting a loan for this first investment property. Obviously, you met a broker that said, look, you're going to have to go second tier. Thankfully, you've done that because somehow that must have catapulted you to the point where you're up to 11. And that's all happened kind of within 5 years. And I'm interested in how much the buyer's agency business. So, of course, you had the success and you've started the business, because there are certain buyer's agents that talk about their portfolios, and of course, you've got a big one. It's a great attracting sort of story to earning business, but often people will say, I've got a portfolio of 50, and they might have had one or two, but then they start the business and have been really successful. So they've got the cash flow and the borrowing capacity to go hard and fast. Was that a similar story with you?
I have bought my after starting my business. My intention always was that I should leave my job once I'm thinking that I'll take a break from buying properties.
Yep.
So I without so okay. So before even starting my business, I was sitting at 8 properties.
Right. There you go.
So then with my Commonwealth Bank job that I was doing, so yeah, after my business, I had to pause because you can't get lending. I've left my PYG income. My business is either not generating enough or has not had that long of an history, which usually the lender needs,
Yep.
right? So my property number 9, 10, and 11 were bought after, but again, with business, there have been challenges because I got registered a bit late for GST. So I think it was much easier for me to get a mortgage with PYG, but now it is getting a little bit complex. So my property number, yeah, just to answer your question, my property number 9, 10, and 11 have been bought after I started my business. But up to property number 8, I didn't even know name of my business that I have today.
Well, that's interesting, and of course, you're entitled to do whatever you like when you start a business. But I guess I was just trying to sort of tug on the thread that might have uncovered the fact that the majority of your portfolio is a direct result of the business, but it's
Yeah.
actually the opposite. You getting to 8 properties within that point of time. Now, I suppose the haters might say, oh, okay, well, working the Commonwealth Bank, on $1 squillion. His wife probably got a job and was earning a lot of money as well. What can you sort of share around your personal situation there?
Yeah, see, I can be very, very transparent there. Honestly, like if that helps someone get inspired, well, that's what we want, right? So with this property itself, my property number 2, which was my property number investment property number 1 in Brisbane. As
Yep.
soon as I got unconditional approval, I was getting greedy. I think I just rang the broker again, asked them how much more mortgage can I get. She mentioned you can get $100,000. I said, is there any other lender? She said no. So I was again maxed out, right? But then I rang another mortgage broker, I think a week later. And at the time, again, I was on a single earner, right? So my wife still hasn't earned ever since we are married. And now she was looking after the kids. So I've spoken to this mortgage broker, which was a different one. He mentioned that he works with NAB. And he mentioned that even if you can get your wife closer to minimum wages of salary, that should be uplifting your borrowing capacity significantly because all of your hem expenses and all that are already being factored in. So
Mhm.
whatever surplus income she brings to the family helps you in your servicing. So I think he proposed that if you can get her. So I got her into a part-time job, like where again primary focus was to look after kids. But if she can start earning, I think her package since the time until she left was I think less than 50 grand. So she
Right.
joined between 40 to 50 grand. I don't even exactly know how much it was, but it was somewhere between that. And then I was told by this mortgage broker that wait until July because like once you get to July and you have got an history of 5 6 months of working, then in July, as soon as you two salary slips, yeah, NAB can actually take a forecast of that and give you the borrowing, and that
Right.
has actually been a big win. So I still remember in July, as soon as we got the second pay slip, I think around 2:30 at 2:45, my broker had those slips. We were desperately waiting for that, and he came back with a pre-approval. I don't even remember if he gave a pre-approval or that was a verbal confirmation. I think that was a pre-approval that he gave me. So it was again around. He said, "Man, you can go and buy property around $400,000."
Yep.
And the good part now here is because I was always interested in property, always kept researching, but never had funds, right? So now this reminds me of a good quote from Les Brown. So and that really resonates with me. He says that you should always be prepared and not have an opportunity, then having an opportunity and not being prepared, right?
Mm.
So that now reminds me, because I was looking at properties all the time, never had fun. But as soon as he told me I can buy a property, I think within the next couple of days, I bought my next property.
There you go.
Because
So you were
I've
ready.
already zeroed down to the locations. See, I was always just not having funds. So
Yep.
ended up buying my investment property number two, which was actually property number three in Perth.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, in Perth, Huntingdale, I bought that property at $310,000 on a corner lot, which was on a 665-meter block. And this property, and as soon as we got the formal approval on that, I immediately on the same day, I think on the same call itself, I was asking my broker man, how much can I borrow more? So he said, get me the rental appraisal. And this 310 property at the time, I think I got rental appraisal of around 380, which was a
Yeah. Right.
good rental,
Mm.
considering the price. So, and during this time frame, if I roughly remember, I think the interest rates were also falling, and which were making an impact on the borrowing capacity. And also this higher rental was also assisting me in the borrowing capacity. So he told
Yep.
me, man, you can go for another 400K purchase, which made me buy another property. Like in July, I signed up a contract, and in August, I ended up signing another contract in the next suburb called Thornley, again in Perth. And then as soon as I got a formal approval for that, again asked him. He said, man, another you can still buy, because that 400K property was, I think, had a rental appraisal of around 450.
Mm.
So I was saying, man, you can still go with around 350, 400K. I then ended up buying another property in September. So in 3 months back to back, I signed a contract in July, August, September in three properties in Perth.
Wow.
And yes.
You've been very busy in that time period. Was there any part of you that kind of thought, look, it's great that I'm getting the funds here, but should I be worried about a potential decrease in rents or a downturn? Like, was there any part of you that kind of thought, you know, I'm acquiring a fair bit of debt here, or did you just fundamentally believe in your strategy, and whenever you could get money, you knew you could make it work for you?
Yeah, that's what I always thought. I thought these properties, because they were sitting at very low prices, right? Like
Yep.
if you start looking at the replacement value, I was probably just paying for the land value.
Mm.
I was paying like 310, 400, 412. I've always thought, like, how low can they go? Maybe
Mm.
another 5, 10%. But as long as I can hold this asset, which at the time was easy because the interest rate was not as high.
Yep.
So I think I was just doing my numbers, and a couple of, I think at the time it might have been even neutral or positive geared. So yeah, I just kept buying without thinking too much. And I'm glad that I didn't thought too much and didn't become too analytical. Otherwise, I might have stopped. And
Yep.
that was actually good time to be in Perth. So yeah, ended up buying three. And I was still told that after my third purchase, I was told that I can go for my last 350K bit, but that is going to be my loss. That is
Right.
what I was told by my broker. And then I ended up, so again, see, everything happens for a reason. I think I started meeting the right people. This broker told me, when you couldn't get anything more than 350K. Then I met someone. He's a well-renowned mortgage broker from Golden Heights, I think is the name.
Hmm.
Max Phelps. He has written a book. So I
We've had him on
remember.
the show, actually, Max.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Max Phelps. Yeah, ask him. So I was working at Commonwealth Bank in November. I exactly remember it was somewhere in mid-November. We had a strategy session with Max, and Max told me, man, there is a way how you can keep borrowing using trust structures.
Yep.
He was the one who introduced me to trust structures. And you taking Max help, I ended up buying and I was negotiating on two properties, one in Melbourne and one in Mackay. And in March 2022, I bought one property, my property number six in Mackay. This was in a suburb called Mount Pleasant, and
Hmm.
very close to, like, it is, I think, 2-3 minutes from the Mount Shopping Plaza, and then very close to three prominent schools there. In this property again, I got it for $300,000. They were asking 330. I got it for 300. Got another 8,000 reduced using building and pest. So I actually got it at 292. This property is under rented at the moment, as is fetching me $500 per week.
Wow.
Its rental is expected to be 600. So on this lease renewal, I'll increase it. But at the time when I bought that property, I think it was still rented at 400, 450, somewhere around that. I don't remember exactly what the amount was. But see, in March 2022, I ended up buying this. In May 2022, I ended up buying another property in Townsville. Again, these were all trust structures now. So I bought this property under Trust One. Then in May 2022, in the same trust, I ended up buying another property in Townsville. This is the only dual occupancy that I've got. So in Townsville, there's a suburb called Shaw. This is, I think, the most newest property in my portfolio, because the whole portfolio up till now has been built on 40, 50, 60-year-old properties. But this property was a 2015 year built, where there was a 3-2-2 configuration in the front, a detached granny at the back. So as soon as I bought this property, I spent three and a half grand to put a fence in between. I rented out them as separately. So I bought this property at $413,000. And back in the day, I remember I was able to rent it at front one at 450, the rear one at 250. So collectively, it was giving me $700 in rental. Currently, the rental combined is sitting at 840 for this. So we kept increasing it by 10, $20 each year. And yes. And then the following month, in June 2022, I ended up buying another property in the next suburb, which is Mount Louisa. Again, this was, I think, one of the best purchases. Again, it is a 5-bed, 2-bath, very massive home, which has an infinity edge pool, very big deck. The owner spent $100,000 building it 2 years ago. They have listed it for 499. They were not willing to give it less than 480. I pushed them too hard and was able to get that at 450. And then using Building Invest again, reduced another 15 grand. I got this property at 435. It
Oh,
is
wow.
currently rented at 670 per week. So this was my property number 8 in June. So I think between January 2021 to June 2022, in 18 months, I've ended up buying these 7.
Yep. And I know the following month was a month that will stick in your memory, and we'll touch on that for a second. But at that point in time, were we talking about a fairly positive cash flow portfolio?
Man, it's very difficult. Like, I think I'm getting old now. I don't remember when the interest rate starts rising.
Yeah.
But at the time, like I talk about, like if I just think the purchase price and the rentals, I think they were pretty positive. But
Yep.
I don't remember when the interest rate started rising.
Yeah, look, I guess just leading into the next point, where in July, the following month, 2022, you had a rather traumatic life event that I think perhaps fed into your decision of what you want the rest of your life to be. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So exactly. Okay, so next month, again on 13th of July, when it was my son's 7th birthday, and I have completed exactly 5 years. We celebrated. I just went to drop a friend's family home, and when I was returning, 200 meters from my home, I met a major car crash.
Right.
So I'm glad that I was alone at the time. So I just then that was a turning point for me, because I was just building our life up, and I got a car, and which just I think the next 2-3 weeks were really difficult, because I started thinking, man, I think I was trying to do the right thing, and it just wasn't expected.
Yep.
But yeah, but I think those were actually the turning moments. I started thinking, reevaluating, because I was in a job where I was not liking it, though it was paying good salary, but I thought, man, I could have been dead. So I was always worried, like even more worried when I've taken these mortgages now. So I
Yep.
was thinking, like, I'm now more dependent on my job. But then I thought, man, if I would have been dead in this car crash, my mortgages would have been paid anyway, right?
Yep.
So I think I need to reevaluate, like, how long can I continue to do this, which I'm not liking. But then during this time, I've developed this fashion, and I was also started. I've helped too many friends along this way, because I always loved the negotiation bit. Like I remember helping a friend buy a home in Schofields, where we just secured, because he was too scared in negotiations and he was not willing to speak. Now I told him, don't speak to the agent, just text him and
Yep.
send the text to me. I'll send you the response. You send it back to them. That way we have secured his first home, which
Yep.
he was initially struggling. So I really loved the process, but again, I never knew how I can make money out of it. But I think I still remember in February, March, when I was So I was a significant contributor on propertychat.com.au. So there, someone recommended me, when you are doing this, be a buyer's agent, and I didn't know what a buyer's agent was.
Right.
But then after this incident, like I I came across Ben's feed, and then I thought, man, this is a profession which people can actually do, and like this was the thing that I was doing even for free, and if I can get paid for it, why not? Like,
Yep.
yeah, so I think that gave me a push, and then yeah, then that basically it took us a couple of months to basically get through the certifications, and I got interested in real estate even prior, where I wanted to start as a so I've got assistant agent license even a couple of I think months before, not months, but I think a year or 2 years before. I
Mhm.
started working as a part-time sales agent, but I really never worked because I never made a single dollar there. I
Right.
just used to show some house and land packages. I was successfully able to sign two deals, but then I never got paid, and I never even asked them to pay me because. And then after two deals, two those contracts, I never went them because I always felt like when I'm making a sale, I felt like I'm cheating people. So that doesn't sit with me.
Yeah.
So that
Right.
was a very short stint. I stopped working there. I had this assistant license, but then I had to do another 14, 15 modules in order to get to my Queensland pathway. And then through mutual recognition, I got licensed here. So it took me a couple of months, but I think around November 2022, that was the time when I founded Investigate and started my buyer's agency.
Yep. And at that point, quite a few runs on the board as well. So
Yeah.
once you're good at something, you'll find people come out of the woodwork to say, "Oh, how did you do that?" And you help
Yeah.
people and family and friends for free. And then I guess it was a big realization that, well, this actually can be a career for me and something that I'm more passionate about
Yeah.
than working in IT, for example.
Yeah, yeah. And I think my initial few clients were just my colleagues. All of them. Like they knew that what I've done for myself. So like I think my up to how many? Up to four, five, six clients were just my colleagues.
Yeah, there you
My
go.
team members, the people whom I all from my department in the office.
Yep. So devil's advocate again, Rohit. I guess there'll be people listening today, kind of thinking, "Look, everything's sort of now 600 or 700K as a price point. Interest rates are higher. What you're doing is not replicable." And let's say that is true to some extent.
Yeah.
The sands always are shifting. How would you kind of counter that question to say that, maybe it's too difficult to build a portfolio or too difficult to get yourself into a position where you are building an asset base that is going to fundamentally change your financial outcome?
Yeah. See, again, when I was building my portfolio, I never thought that I'll be coming this far. So that's what I always keep telling people. I
Mhm.
always tell that I'm always looking for next one more mortgage. That's it.
Yep.
Next one more asset. So mortgage doesn't sound very fancy, but next one more asset, right? So your target is always like based on your current circumstances. If you can afford to buy in a growing market, that's what I'm targeting. I'm not looking at next 10, next 50, right? So you always start with one step. So just keep buying in the right markets and see price points. I think with respect to when I bought this property back in 2019, the place that I'm living in, like it was bought at $900,000, and this place, and I always thought, man, it couldn't grow from that. It's almost $2 million now, like in 5 years, right? And people say it won't grow further. Like I don't know where it will head, right? But looking at the demand supply fundamentals, I think yeah, there is still some room for growth. If not in these markets, then at least markets which are much more affordable.
Mm.
Because if you start looking at Melbourne now, right, like it doesn't make sense where Melbourne is sitting today in terms of comparing to the average income that people are making here in Sydney versus what they're making in Melbourne. The earning capability or what market is offering is very similar, but in price points, you are looking at two and a half, three times in a difference, right? So yeah. So yeah, in Sydney, probably difficult to replicate, I would say. But yeah, then there are other markets. So I always personally feel there are always going to be markets in next 12 months which are going to be growing, whether you know it or you not. Right.
Yep.
So like if you know how to find them, yeah, there is a potential for growth.
And I've heard people describe property investing as really a game of finance, and you were able to play that game very effectively. You didn't sort of stop at the first rejection from a mortgage broker. You got creative. You looked at other lending opportunities. You also seem to have purchased very well from a cash flow point of view and capital growth upside. I mean, you talked about a couple of properties in Perth and Townsville, like two locations that have done an an incredible amount of growth in the last little while. Are those the two things that you would kind of point to that really underpin your success, or where was the kind of secret sauce for you when you look
Yeah.
back and you look at what you did?
Yeah, I think that's what I kept focusing on initially, cash flow and capital growth, and that is I'm a strong advocate of. Even in my expos, I'm giving seminars on this. That in order to be building a sizable portfolio, you have to make it sustainable. Because if it is not sustainable, you really can't make it sizable.
Yep.
So focusing on cash flow and capital growth, at least during your initial three, four, five, seven properties, is very critical. Down the track, you can be a little bit more creative, might have a little bit more buffer to play with, but your initial few purchases needs should not be adding a lot of burden from cash flow perspective. Because
Yep.
even if, say, for example, you end up buying a property which has not given you that short-term capital growth, but if it is still good in cash flow, then at least you can hold it long enough for you to be giving it time to grow, right? So yeah, I think focusing on cash flow and capital growth has got me where I am today.
And if there is some, special, easy to point at, perfect, Rohit investor grade property, I mean, firstly, is there one? And if there is, like, what would characterize that? How would you describe something that you actually think is a quality asset for someone that's trying to build a portfolio and needs to kind of consider a cash flow balance, but wants that capital growth upside?
Yeah, so are we referring to so are we wanting to map it to locations as of today, or
Yeah, well, that's, I suppose, I was just thinking there's two ways to look at that. Is it a house versus unit versus townhouse, or is
or
it something with a dual income capacity? But it's also the location as well. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. Oh, look, if you get the location right, the property type is not necessarily important, or do you feel like you actually have to get them both right and they should look like X, Y, Z?
yeah, see, I personally feel like in order to get the best outcome, you need to be buying the right asset type. Nothing better than a freestanding home
Yep.
in the right locations where the market cycle timing is favorable. So I think 60, 70, or maybe 80% role is played just by the market cycle timing. If you're buying a dud asset in the market cycle timing, which is about to boom, you will still make a lot more growth in comparison to buying the best asset, but in a market which is where the cycle is not favorable, right?
Yep.
So my recommendation to anyone is like look at, if possible, in the markets that you where you see the market cycle timing is going to be favorable or is favorable today. If you can afford, go for the freestanding home if possible,
Yep.
because you have got maximum upside potential there. Yeah, see, just applying the basic principle, right? Like you understand the land is the appreciating asset, building is a depreciating asset. The bigger the
Yes.
land component, or like if out of your X dollars, like a bigger chunk of that is going towards the appreciating asset and the smaller chunk is going to depreciating, then that I think there is a massive potential. So for us, when we are buying properties now for our clients, so we basically follow two strategies. One of them is, say for example, if we are buying properties which are 5, 7, 10 years old, I try to look for locations where I can buy the property just for the build value and grab the land for free. So, say
Yep.
for example, we have done multiple purchases for clients where the land is costing you maybe 200K and the build is costing you 500K, and we are getting the whole property 2 years old less than 500K. So,
Yep.
grabbing the land for free, you couldn't replicate that if you were building yourself, buying the land separately, right?
Mm.
And if I am, say, for example, if I'm the other strategy that I think I'm a strong follower of is, if you are buying a property which is a bit too old, like 40, 50-year old build, if we are looking at, then if you can grab those properties just on the land value and grabbing the build for free, which still has got another couple of decades life remaining, then that could be again a basic principle. Like this is not something which you can make work everywhere, but yeah, if you can start applying these basic principles in the markets, then I think you have got more probability of doing it correctly than incorrectly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's difficult to argue with your track record as well. And speaking of that, with the markets that you've transacted in, we mentioned Townsville, Perth, places like Mackay that have had some good growth as well. I'm sure there'll be people listening that sort of their ears pricked up that Melbourne is a place that you are looking. Are there any other locations? And if it is sort of Melbourne centric, well, what is it that kind of fits your model of this is a market that we can time and get that growth on the upswing?
Yeah, see, Melbourne, I see huge potential. My last two purchases have been in Melbourne. One of the purchases that I've done in Melbourne is in Berwick. it is in a blue chips like it's a very very good suburb, but I think the cash flow is going to be terrible.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't advise. So see, that is what I always keep saying. Like, say for example, if you're getting an asset today which is committing you $5 million, or if you have got that conviction that that will give you $5 million in capital growth in next 10 years, you should at least have the cash flow appetite to be able to hold it for 10 years, even to
Yep.
get that capital growth, right? So these kind of assets, like, well, like the asset that I bought in Berwick, I wouldn't advise that to others, because I myself now realizing that this is costing me $35,000 in negative gearing each year.
Yeah.
So I can probably hold one of them, but not a couple, even if they are what huge upside potential. So yeah, in Melbourne, again, depending upon where you are sitting with your existing portfolio, so there is no one size fits all, right? People need to look at their active incomes. People need to look at what they have got in their portfolios. Someone who has got 4 or 5 good cash flow properties, they can probably acquire something a little bit more negative. But
Mm.
someone who is just starting out, and if you get them a property similar to this Berry purchase, then and we like this negative cash flow is going to be squeezing their borrowing capacity, which is the ultimate goal that they have got setting with them today to
Mm.
build their portfolio. So just need to be cautious regarding cash flow there.
I love that. Yeah, and I suppose it's a horrible ownership journey for the period of time where you're waiting for that growth, right? And I think the
Exactly.
majority of investors only ever get one, and sometimes it's because that first one is so painful, and maybe they
Yeah.
sell it at the wrong time, and really, if they'd held on, it'd be a completely different
Yeah.
thing. Look, it's an amazing story that you've got, Rohit, and congratulations on the success that you've
Thanks, man.
got. To tie a bit of a bow in the episode today, I'm just looking for people that are, I suppose, the advice that you would give to people wanting to try and replicate your results. Of course, everything's personal. Everyone's on their own personal journey in terms of
Mm.
what they have already, what their salary is, and those sorts of stuff. But is there any advice that you would share for someone that's just starting slow and wanting to build that portfolio, and lessons that you've learned along the way with what you've done and also with your clients as well?
Yeah, sure. See, I think comparison is the thief of joy. So nobody should be comparing. Again, as you rightly said, like everyone has got their own journey. So I think everyone, what they should be targeting is, if they're wanting to build wealth through real estate investing and they're wanting to have this as a vehicle for growth, then just look for the next one best purchase. Never start looking at, man, I want to buy four in this time frame. That just puts you on in an additional pressure, which might mean you end up making some sacrifices along the way, right?
Mm.
So, say for example, I keep hearing from a lot of clients who says, "Man, I want to buy two properties. For that reason, I just don't want to invest 50,000 more in the property number one, and I'm happy to get it a little bit inferior." And that is what I think is not the right approach, because you should not be compromising on your current asset purchase to get a better one down the track, right?
Mm.
So whenever you are acquiring an asset, if you have to stretch by 10, 20, 50K, and if you are financially capable, get a best asset, because you're whenever you're wanting to build a portfolio, it's even more important, because you're not wanting to stack cheapies. You're not wanting to stack properties which might cost you a lot more in terms of its maintenance. 1 2 years sometime there could be a case, right, like where you bought something which there were so many maintenance which were due, and you might have end up spending $10,000, but that is fine, right? Whenever you're making a purchase, you have got that understanding that you should be, but you don't want to be just stacking cheapies thinking that more number of properties are always better. So it's not regarding the count. I think what matters is that you want to be buying in the right markets, at least decent asset, if not good, and don't stack cheapies. Yeah, just because you want to buy. See, I was talking to a past client of mine who has got 800,000 budget. I don't want to name anyone here, but he has got 800,000 of budget. He said, "Man, I want to be buying two properties, hence I'll go for 350K, 400 purchase." I
Yep.
told him, "Man, good luck. I wouldn't help you, though I can, but I wouldn't, because I know these are not the best assets
Mm.
that people should be buying today for growth. And if you are buying them just because you want two properties, then at least I don't want to be tagging my name to your purchases, because I see a lot of risk." So my advice to you is, buy one with 600K budget, save that 200, go to another lender. There are lending strategies using which you can probably spend more than 800K and then get two good assets rather than two cheap ones.
I love that, because it does always seem like it's about the number. It's about
Yeah,
10 properties in 10 years or 30 by 30 and
yeah,
all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the quality assets that you grab along the way that ends to the final position, not
Yeah.
I've got 15 terrible quality things that give me headaches and I can't sleep at night because of the problems I'm having with the tenants and the maintenance and that sort of stuff. It's much better
Exactly.
to focus on the quality, right?
Yeah, and it will also it will also demotivate you to be going for the next one then, right? Like say for example, if you end up buying two bad purchases, it will just stop you there because that will just demotivate you and make you think that real estate is probably not a good asset type to invest, right?
Mm.
So I think, yeah, and when I say good properties, I'm not referring to the flashy new properties, right?
Yep.
There is a lot more than the cosmetics, but I'm referring to properties in the right locations with right bones and structures. That is what I'm referring to. My whole portfolio has been like, though I'm buying much newer properties for my client because probably they have got less risk appetite than myself, but I built my whole portfolio and most of them are 50, 60, 70 year old properties and they have
Yep.
grown more than like my property number 1 to 8, like all of them has almost doubled now in the last 2, 3, 4 years, right? So they can give you good growth, they can give you good rental, they can be with less maintenance if you do your due diligence correctly. So when I say good, doesn't need to be new, but it needs to have all other fundamentals stacking up.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that. Great advice. And thank you very much for so generously sharing your story from the beginning to where you are today. Congrats on the success and thank you for sharing all your wisdom.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks a lot for
Cheers,
having me.
Rohit.
Thank you. Cheers. Have a great day. Bye.
Been a pleasure. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. Bye.